Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a man...
Gat Out of Hell is the standalone expansion / pseudo-sequel to Saints Row 4. Taking place an unspecified amount of time after the main game, the story begins when the remnants of the Saints mess about with a Ouija board for Kinzie Kensington's birthday, resulting in the boss being kidnapped by Satan and dragged into hell in order to marry his daughter Jezebel. Determined to rescue their leader, Gat and Kinzie travel to hell to save them.
Is that not normal?
The gameplay itself would be more than familiar to anyone accustomed with the series, and much like Saints Row 4 before it, Gat Out of Hell bestows a series of superpowers onto your characters. While the familiar blast and stomp abilities return, there are new powers in the form of summons and auras. In reality, however, these pale in comparison to the returning abilities, and even your most destructive summon or aura is nothing compared to a well-placed blast or a well-timed stomp. In fact, the stomp ability can become so overpowered that destroying spires or taking part in some of the side activities can take a matter of seconds rather than minutes to complete.
I'm sick of your shit!
This wouldn't be so much of an issue if there was plenty to do in Gat Out of Hell, but side quests are relatively thin on the ground this time around. A smaller map means fewer things to do, but it's also compounded by the fact that most of the tasks involve taking down spires or surviving waves of enemies to a quota. Those same tasks were prevalent within Saints Row 4, but they were also offset by the myriad of other activities and main story missions. In Gat Out of Hell, they're the overwhelming majority of the gameplay.
I'm gonna shoot the devil in the face.
I think you might be skipping some details.
No, I said in the face.
I like the commitment.
This imbalance is compounded by the fact that there's only 1 or 2 new activities to play through, but only 3 instances of them across the map, and the remaining bunch of things to do are mostly just bare-bones reskins of familiar classics that simply stick with a if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. The constant survival hordes would be far more fun if the guns were anything to shout about, but they're honestly not. All of the standard guns you collect throughout the gameplay are seriously boring in comparison to the likes of, say, the infamous dubstep gun, and just about get the job done. As you progress and explore, you'll soon come across weapons based on the 7 deadly sins, but these aren't that much better. Even the best of these, an armchair equipped with dual miniguns, needs plenty of upgrading before the positives outweigh its many, many serious drawbacks.
The wheels of the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels of...
Perhaps the biggest disappointment with Gat Out of Hell is just the fact that it isn't even all that funny. It starts out promisingly, but slowly trundles downhill from there. Nearly all of the fully animated cutscenes contain a few solid laughs, but everything else is lacking. The lack of consistency in tone of humour comes across as if the animated sequences, the storybook narration and the in-game dialogue were all written by entirely different teams, who never consulted each other and then never bothered making sure that all the jigsaw pieces fit together.
Fuck this! I think you're a smart enough piece of wood to see where this is going. Now you ready to cooperate? That's more like it.
What makes this worse is that, outside of those fully rendered cutscenes, the humour present is hands down some of the laziest seen in Saints Row the 3rd, 4, or any of their respectable downloadable content, because nearly all of it does the incredibly infuriating line of humour where all the jokes are, "Oh man, don't you hate it when games make you do this thing that we're going to make you do now?" and openly pokes holes at itself in the hope that you'll laugh and accept it, rather than realise they've just exposed one of the game's many flaws.
Time's slipping away now, and the best plan we've got is just put one inside Satan's head. If roles were reversed, God, I know they'd save me, but all my solutions involve murder sprees.
Perhaps the most tragic part about it is that, unlike Saints Row 4, there are far fewer opportunities to make your own humour through emergent gameplay, and because there's no licensed soundtrack to speak of, you're extremely unlikely to create an experience as memorable as the first time you created mayhem with a dubstep gun, throwing a tank at aliens to the strain of Hadaway's What Is Love, or gliding around the city before stomping on enemies to the sounds of the safety dance.
Defiant to the end!
The progression in previous iterations was dictated through the main story missions, but in Gat Out of Hell, the story progresses by how much of hell you've managed to conquer, and thus how much Satan is pissed off at you. What it actually means is that you can't enjoy the story at your own pace, or even avoid it entirely while you mess about and explore the underworld. It's a bit jarring when you'll be completing a side activity, only for the game to tell you to stop exploring, force you to watch a cutscene, and then reset the action back at the old tall building that acts as your starting location before letting you play again.
Be a wife or be a thrall. They say the devil's in the details, and I have some more for you. So let's...
Sadly, everything is over far too quickly. You can reach the maximum level of 20 with 30% of the game still left to go. You can attempt the final encounter before you finish most of the missions thanks to the frankly balmy progression structure, and even taking the time to soak in the surroundings and explore wherever you could, you still managed to have the entirety of hell under your whim within 5 hours.
But then I think, fuck it! YOLO!
It still looks pretty, the environments are genuinely a joy to explore, and it's still incredibly satisfying to level up your power of flight, ignore the litany of tasks ahead of you, jump off a building and not have to touch the ground for minutes at a time. But, when the best part of a title comes from sacking off the gameplay entirely, you have to worry that somewhere, something has gone horribly wrong.
Let him go.
Not now, Jesse. The men are talking.
If this was a piece of downloadable content as part of a season pass, it'd be less of a bitter pill to swallow, but considering it's barely 5 hours long when you're actively trying to avoid finishing it, the fact it's been sold on Steam for almost the same price as Saints Row 4 feels a little bit insulting. Despite everything going for it, Gat Out of Hell made the gameplay of Saints Row 4, one of the best games of 2013, feel totally and utterly average. And that's its greatest sin of all.
Satan! You want to get out of here?
I can't believe that worked.
Occam's razor.